let's land on that island. Okay. Okay, so A is saying, hey, our ship is damaged. We can't keep on sailing. We can't keep sailing. We have to stop. Let's land on that island. Okay, so in this one simple looking sentence, there are a whole bunch of grammatical concepts that you have to meticulously understand. First of all, how would we say that island? Because depending on perspective, there are 6 words that can be translated into that, or maybe 4. It depends on perspective. Well, actually, it doesn't depend on perspective. Well, but right now, to simplify things, I will say 4. Okay, so in this case, we have to say that. Okay, so I'll give you a situation. So which one should we use out of the 4? So they have a ship, A and B. Okay, so they're on a ship. Their ship is damaged, so they can't keep sailing, so they have to land on that island. Okay, so let's take a look. So in this case, which word out of the 4, 6 actually, but I'm just going to say 4 just to simplify things. You have to know 4. It is better to know 6, but you're pretty much safe with 4. Okay, so first of all, now we have to know whether we will use a version that starts with J or starts with G, right? It could be 저거 or 저. It could be 그거 or 그. Now all these 4 words can be that, and that. Okay, so which one should we use? So first of all, when would you use a version that starts with J? When whatever that is, that island in this case, whatever that is physically located almost roughly equally away from both the listener and speaker. So in other words, when whatever that is not significantly closer to the listener and it's not significantly closer to the speaker either. So, yeah, I believe because of that, it's a perfect situation for us to use a version that starts with J, 저거 or 저, because as you can see, if we're on a ship and we're looking at an island that's far away, I don't think we can say that that island is significantly closer to A or significantly closer to B either. It's roughly located equally away. So we're going to use one of 저거 or 저, because that's when you use a version of that starts with J. Okay, so first let's eliminate 그거 and 그. And then, now, this time we have to choose whether we will use 저거 or 저. So, yeah, when do you use 저거 and when do you use 저? Well, 저거 is when you're using that alone. 저 is when you are placing that in front of some kind of a noun so that you can use those two as a pair. For example, someone can look at this marker and say, is that marker expensive? Or they can say, is that expensive? So if I'm just using that alone, then it would have been 저거. But if I'm going to say that marker, now I placed it in front of a noun marker and used it as a pair. In that case, I'm going to use 저. Okay, so in this case, which one should we use then out of the 4? Is it this or this? Exactly, yes. It's 저 because I placed it in front of a noun, island, and I am using it as a pair, that island. Okay. So, we know how to say that island now, so let's start with that because we have location on that island, and now we have let's land as the verb because, yeah, I'm not going to actually place anything separate that is the equivalent of let's. It's going to be implied in the verb. We're going to figure out how to do it. Okay, so of course location first, and we know how to say that island, right? 저. And then, not the only way of saying island, but the most colloquial, 섬. 섬, island. Okay, 저 섬, that island. Okay, so speaking of island, this is a little bit off topic. It's not as important, but now when you're saying island, when the word island is attached to a name of the island, then it's going to be 도. 도 will play the role of island if you're talking about an island specifically with its name, 제주도, Jeju Island. So, when the word island is attached to its actual name, then island will be 도. If you're just saying island separately, then it's 섬. Okay, so that's why when people go to Jeju Island, when they come to Korea, they call it 제주도. They don't call it 제주섬. Okay, so 저섬. Now we have to figure out how to say on. Okay, so when in English, let's take a look at English first. So in English, when you have a verb and a location, usually there's in, on, or at, right? Sleep in this room. Dance on the stage. Let's meet at the restaurant. So when you have a verb and location, you usually have one of these prepositions, in, on, at. Now in Korean, you have to keep in mind two things. First, of course, have the order between the location word and verb reversed. And you're going to attach 에 or 에서. So you have to know when to use which. So if you do use one of these two, they will play the role of in, on, at. However, you have to know when to use which. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to use, now usually you will use 에서 more often. However, in this case, I'm going to use 에. So you have to be aware of which one you have to use according to the 문맥, the context, to always spontaneously on the spot decide which one to use. In this case, I'm going to use 에. Now, why is that? You have to really meticulously understand because in a real life spontaneous situation, you don't really have time to compute. So it means that you have to really meticulously understand it right now so you can practice over and over again properly and correctly so that when you are in a real life situation, the right answer just slips out effortlessly. Okay, so I'm going to use 에 for a very specific reason. You use 에 instead of 에서. I'm sorry, I'll just rewrite 에서. You use 에 instead of 에서 when the verb is the means that allows you to get to the location. Once again, you use 에 instead of 에서 when the verb is the means that allows you to get to the location. For example, if I'm going to say, I sleep in this room. In that case, yeah, I do have a verb and I do have a location, room. And there's in, on, at in English. Sleep in this room. Sorry, what's happening here? Sleep in this room. However, in this case, I'm going to use 에서 because is sleeping the means that I used to get to the room? Is sleeping how I got to the room? Is that the case? Is it a yes or no? Did I sleep in order to get to the room? Exactly. No. The means that I used to get to the room is to walk. I walked to this room and then I fell asleep. Sleeping was not how I got to this room. On the other hand, in this case, landing is how I will get on this island. Because if I just simply approach this island, let's say this is the island, and this is my ship. If I just simply approach this island, I didn't really get to this island. So I got close to the island, but I'm going to land in order to actually get on the island. So, yes, once again, you use 에 when the verb that you're using is the means, is how you got to the location. If that's not the case, then use 에서. Okay. So, for example, that's why if I'm going to tell my friend, hey, let's meet at the restaurant, in that case, I'm going to use 에서 because meeting him is not how I got to the restaurant. I drove to the restaurant. Driving is how I got to the restaurant. Once I got to the restaurant, I met you. So meeting you is not how I got to the restaurant. So it's 에서. Okay. So right now, landing is how I will get on this island. Okay. So I'm going to use 에. Oh, thank you, thank you. No, thank you, thank you. Thank you for paying attention. Thank you. Okay. 저 섬에. And then, now, let's land. Now, what is the display form of land? 상륙하다. It might be a little bit tricky to pronounce. 상륙하다. Okay, it might be a little bit tricky to pronounce. But anyway, I don't want its display form. I don't want the 다 ending that indicates display form, do I? I want to give it an ending that somehow implies let's. Okay, so I always say don't use 자, right? 자 is only used in 반말. We are not practicing 반말 right now, right? So, and one of the biggest misconceptions is thinking that, oh, if I'm speaking 존댓말, honorifics, then should I use 조 instead? Well, this is not technically completely wrong, but it could sound extremely poetic. Okay, so what is the best way to attach let's to a verb then? Well, the best way of doing it is, as I always say, to not do it at all. Let the context do it. So I'm just going to simply say land in its actual form in present tense. That's all. I'm not going to do anything else. So how would I say land? 상륙하다 in its actual form, simply present tense. Let's go to inflection route number 1. Exactly. Wait, where's the marker? Okay, so what are the rules within inflection route number 1? If I'm just going to say it in its actual form, present tense, it means that I'm going to give it the yo ending, right? Which belongs to inflection route number 1. So what are the rules within inflection route number 1? Exactly. If you have a display form that ends with the ha syllable, once ta is removed, well, then you apply a 3-step formula, right? Remove ta, change ha into he, and then attach the new ending. Okay, so let's do just that. 천천히, remove ta, and then change ha into he, and then 드디어 attach 요. Okay, so now we have 상륙해요. 상륙해요, which is now the actual form, present tense of land, which is land. However, so that means that it's just simply the basic form of land, which is land. But all basic forms of all verbs in Korean can also simultaneously play the role of let's verb. So land can also be let's land. It depends on context because once again, yes, you can use the 조 ending as let's. Technically, that is not wrong. However, it could sound very, 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 very poetic. Okay, so it doesn't really fit everyday life conversations. So just use the basic form of a verb and let the context add let's to it. It's already implied. Because right now, let's think about the context, the situation. A and B are on a ship together. They were running away from a pirate ship, and now they finally found an island that they can land on. In that case, if someone says land, of course they're saying let's land, because both of them have to land. Okay, so we're just going to say land, and the context and situation will change it into let's land. Okay, so 저 섬에 상륙해요. 저 섬에 상륙해요. 저 섬에 상륙해요. Let's land on that island. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay. Let's move on to the 다음 문장. It's going to be B's 문장 this time. Okay, so B's 문장. So let's say B is practically the captain. He makes the decisions. So B is going to say, hey, there is no So this is how you will say it in Korean. There is no information. And of course, in English, you can say on, but we're going to say about. When you're saying information on something, just use about. There is no information about that island. Okay, so also in this one simple looking sentence, there are a couple of grammatical concepts that you have to meticulously understand in order to properly translate. Okay, so first of all, there is and there is no is going to be one word in Korean, right? A verb. So we're going to look at it as a verb. And when you are using there is or there is no, whatever comes next, give it the subject position. So I'm going to look at information about that island all together as the subject. Now, why is that? Because when you're placing about in between two nouns, then do not separate them. If you're placing about in between two nouns, for example, it's a book about religion, or it's a movie about music. So if you're placing about in between two nouns, they stay together. In other words, if one is the subject, they are all the subject. So information about that island, information, island, both nouns. Okay, so that's why I'm going to look at it as a bulky subject. Okay, so, well, if that's the case, let's take a look into the next step. So, in Korean, using about can be a little bit tricky because In Korean, about will look different depending on whether you're placing it in between a verb and a noun or in between two nouns. For example, we talked about the future, our future. In that case, future noun, talk verb. So, in that case, about will look different because it's a version that is placed in between a verb and a noun. But if I'm going to say, I watched a movie about religion, whatever. In that case, yes, it's about in between two nouns, so it's going to be a separate version that looks completely different. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to show you the version of about that is placed in between two nouns, but always be mindful of the fact that about looks different depending on how you're placing it. Is it between a verb and a noun or between two nouns? Okay. So when you are using about, placing about in between two nouns, well, first of all, be mindful of the fact that you have to have the order between the two nouns reversed. So we're going to say that island first. Okay. Now, there are in large two ways you can place about in between two nouns. Well, the first way of doing it is to attach 에 대한 to the first noun. 저 섬에 대한, 저 섬에 대한. Number two is 에 관한, 저 섬에 관한. I'll just write both of them at the same time. Okay, so the two ways that you can place about in between two nouns is to, yes, attach 에 관한 to the first noun or 에 대한. Okay, so is there a significant nuance difference between the two? Is one of them poetic? No, actually this time it's a situation where it simply comes down to habit. So, some people just simply have a habit of using this version more often. Some people have a habit of using this version more often. So, you can use whichever one you want. So, if you're going to look at it from the bright side, you can tell yourself, oh, I only have to know one. However, that also means that you kind of have to be aware of both, right? Because you don't know which version the person you're talking to will use, and you want to understand what they're saying, right? Okay, so do keep in mind both. You only have to use one. Okay, so there is no specific reason. I'm just going to go with this version. I could have gone with the other version if I wanted to. Okay. 저 섬에 관한, 저 섬에 관한. Oops, I'm sorry. Did I say I? Yeah. Because it also means I, right? Okay. So, 저 섬에 관한, and then just place information. That's it. Now we have the full subject. 정보, information. 정보. 정보, information. Okay, so now we only have to say there is no, and yes, once again, there is no is a verb, right? Wait, it's just a verb, 없다. I'm sorry, why am I placing it all the way there? 없다, yes, but I don't want its display form, do I? I want its actual form in present tense. So I want to give it the yo ending. Therefore, let's go to inflection route number 1 again. Okay, so what are the rules within inflection route number 1? The rules are, outside of a couple of exceptions, typically speaking 4, there are more, but you're pretty much safe with 4. If your goal is not to become a profound linguist that knows everything that even Koreans don't know, well, you're pretty much safe with 4. Okay, so outside of 4 exceptions, if a display form ends with the S consonant, then you apply a 3-step formula. A profound linguist. I'm not sure what I said. I may have butchered that word. If your goal is not to become some kind of a profound linguist that knows everything, that you won't even need in real-life conversations, you're pretty much safe with 4. And 없다 is not one of those 4 exceptions. So, outside of the 4 exceptions, if you have a display form that ends with an S, once ta is removed, within inflection route number 1, apply these 3 steps. Number 1, remove ta. Number 2, place a or all, right? Yes, it's going to be all in this case. You have to study inflection to be aware of these variables, especially when you're in a real-life conversation where you have to pull out the right answer spontaneously on the spot. Okay, so, and then 드디어 attach the ending. 없어요. 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 Okay, so there is no. Okay. Okay, so this time we're going to do something fun, interacting. It's not going to be unilateral, it's going to be bilateral. So, what is B saying? Because I'll remind you of the full 문맥. A said, hey, let's land on that island. Our ship is damaged, we have to stop and fix the ship. We see an island there, let's stop there. B said, 저 섬에 관한 정보 없어요. What is B saying? Is B saying yes or no? Because B technically did not answer the question. But what do you think B is saying? Exactly. No, right? Exactly. How do you guess that it's no? Common sense and context, right? Common sense and context. So, yeah, how do you know that B is saying no to be cautious? Because maybe he's saying, well, there is no information about that island, therefore I'm excited. I love new things. So, yeah, that could have been the case, but we almost unanimously said no, right? Because we share a code called common sense, right? And context. We use common sense to interpret context. Okay, so all of you unanimously said no. Okay, so actually, B did not say no, because once again, it could have been, oh my god, there's no information about that island. How exciting. Let's go. It could have been that, but because all of you unanimously said no, I assume that you all think that there's something implied that B did not actually verbally say, but did kind of say. It's implied. What is that? Can you guess what that is? What B did not verbally actually say, but was kind of implied. There is no information about that island. And then, what would be the sentence that follows up? There is no information about that island. something. So, yes, B is saying, yes, B is saying, let's not land, right? Let's not go there, right? So, B is saying, B did not actually say it, but what is B saying? B is saying, there is no information about that island, so let's not go there, right? Is that what we're going to unanimously according to common sense and context? Right? Because all of you said no, right? Exactly, don't go there. There is no information about that island, so let's not go there. Okay, yes. So, perfect. Perfect then. Why am I saying perfect? Let's rewind and go through the train of thought one more time. I asked you the question, I kind of asked you the question, did B really answer the question? Technically, you could say no, because B did not say yes or no. B could have said, it could have been that B is saying, no, there is no information about that island, so let's not go there. So it's not a good idea. Or it could have been, B is saying, there is no information about that island. How exciting. Let's go. Okay, so technically speaking, both scenarios were plausible. Technically speaking, but we share a code called common sense, and we use that common sense to interpret context, and based on the context, we unanimously arrived at the conclusion that we're going to interpret the situation as B saying, there is no information about that island, so let's not go. Okay, so let's not go. That part was not actually said because it didn't have to be said, because we already interpreted that B is saying, so let's not go, through common sense and context. So let's not go, that part wasn't actually said because it didn't have to be said. What is reason number 5 you would give a subject particle? When a word is a word that saves you from having to say because or so. We have a subject, and the lack of information is the reason why B is saying, so let's not go there. However, B did not actually have to say it, because information was the part in the whole context that saved B from having to say because or so. You just witnessed the proof, right? B did not have to say, so let's not go. We just saw the proof. B did not say it, but all of you unanimously said B is saying, so let's not go. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's what I mean by reason number 5. If a word, a subject, or object is something that saves you from having to say because or so, then it's a good enough reason to give it a subject particle or object particle. It means that ka is kind of replacing because or so. It's playing the role of because or so instead. It doesn't mean because or so, but it's imbuing that function into the sentence. So it's kind of replacing them so that you don't actually have to say it. Okay, so yeah, a word or a sentence saving you from having to say because or so, and still the listener properly interpreting the context is possible. We just looked at the proof. You all just proved it. I didn't tell you whether B was saying yes or no. You all unanimously said no. Okay, because this part of the sentence, the context, is saving B from actually having to say it. It's kind of obvious. So the subject particle will mark that. Okay, the subject particle will say, well, this is a part the part of the context where, yes, so let's not go is kind of implied. Okay, so altogether, 저 섬에 관한 정보가 없어요. 저 섬에 관한 정보가 없어요. So, if you see a subject particle in this type of a situation, go through this train of thought. Oh, I see a subject or object particle. It might be the fact that this person has something to say after the sentence that starts with so, or maybe even because. But the speaker thinks that it's too obvious according to the context. So, what is obvious according to the context right now is the most obvious scenario is, so let's not go. Okay, so I guess the speaker had something else more to say that starts with so, but is telling me, hey, yeah, I have something to say that starts with so, but I don't have to say it, do I? Just go to the most obvious scenario according to the context. What do you think? Yeah, so let's not go. Okay. So that's what it tells you. Hey, I have something more to say that starts with so or because, but I'm not going to say it because all you have to do is just go to the most obvious scenario according to the context. That starts with because or so. Okay. So that's what the subject and object particle can be telling you. Sophia, thank you. Thank you for the lemonade. Thank you. Okay, so that's what I mean by reason number 4. When a word is saving the speaker from having to say because or so. Okay, so if I were to remind you of the full 문맥, okay, so A said, hey, let's land on that island. B said, no, we cannot do that. We don't have any information on that island. So let's not do that. Now, A is going to say, yeah, I know that we don't have any information on that island. And I know that it's risky. However, we kind of have no other choice because A is going to say, we have to fix the ship we can say right now, but I want A to carry a more imminent, impending, urgent tone. So I'm going to use an adverb that is closer to right this moment, not right now. I want to use a much more urgent version of it. Right this moment. We used it maybe a couple of months ago. Maybe once or twice. Of course, ship, the object, and of course, A is talking about we. It's too obvious, therefore I'm not even going to say it. The verb have to fix. Okay, so yeah, first of all, let's place, of course, object, adverb, verb. So ship first. 배. 배. Ship. Okay, and then an adverb that carries the nuance of right this moment. It's a little bit different compared to right now, right? Because right this moment carries a much more impending and urgent tone. 당장. 당장. Hope we have enough space. Okay, so 배, 당장, and then, yes, I'm going to take the verb fix and I'm going to give it the have to ending. Okay, so what is the display form of the verb fix? 고치다. 고치다. Okay, so of course I don't want the ta ending that indicates display form. I want the have to ending. So once again, the have to ending belongs to inflection route number 1. So let's go to inflection route number 1. Okay, so the have to ending, 야 돼요, right? Oops, this is a different type of marker, but still, I think it'll work. 야 돼요. Okay, so it belongs to inflection route number 1, so let's apply the rules of inflection route number 1. What are the rules then? The rules are, if you have a display form that ends with the E vowel, once ta is removed, like we have right now, 고치다. We have a perfect example. So, if you have a display form that ends with the E vowel, once ta is removed, within inflection route number 1, the rules are to apply a 3-step formula, right? Step number 1, remove ta, change E into 여, and then now you can attach the ending, right? Exactly. So, change E into 여, and then 드디어 you can attach the ending. 드디어, finally. Okay. 고쳐야 돼요. 고쳐야 돼요. 고쳐야 돼요. Now it's no longer just fix, now it's have to fix. Okay, so now let's actually place it in the 문장. Okay, so all together, now what do we have? Yes, we have now the full 문장. Let's say it 천천히. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Yeah, if you feel like the nuance fits the context, you can. Corina? Okay, so yeah. If it fits the context. Okay. Yeah, only if it fits the context. Wait, where's the... Wait. Okay. Okay, so now it's B's turn again. So A says, hey, we have to stop right now, right this moment, because the ship is about to sink. So the damage is very serious. We have to fix it right now. But B is saying, no, we can afford skipping this island. Let's go to the next island, because B is saying it can go, of course, it being the ship, it can go a little more. So A and B have different views on how serious the damage is. A thinks that, no, we have to stop right this moment. B says, it can go a little more. We can make it to the next island, which we have a little bit of more information on. Okay, so of course it. I'm not going to even say it because it's of course the ship. And I'm going to take the go verb and give it the can ending. No us and thus, no articles. We have two adverbs, right? Little and more. Okay, so let's place the two adverbs first. Let's get them out of the way first. 조금. 조금. And then more. 더. Sorry. 조금 더. And then, yes, let's place the go verb, but 가다 is the display form of go. It's not the actual form of go. So instead of the 타 ending that indicates display form, I want to give it the can ending. And the can ending belongs to inflection route number 2, right? Yeah, inflection route number 1 might be upset, saying, why am I always the one working? So, inflection route number 2. Now in this case, we get a free pass, right? So let's say, 감사합니다, thank you for the free pass. What does that mean? Because in inflection route number 2, the rules are, if the display form that you're using ends with a vowel, any kind of a vowel, you get a free pass, which means you can just remove 다 and then immediately attach the ending. How simple and friendly is that? Inflection is not often this friendly, right? So let's enjoy when we can. 수 있어요. Okay, so the can ending, and because it belongs to inflection route number 2, I'm going to apply the rules of inflection route number 2. Remove 다, and it ends with the vowel, immediately attach the ending. 바로 attach the ending. Okay, 갈 수 있어요. 갈 수 있어요. 갈 수 있어요. Now it's no longer just go, now it's can go. Okay, so now let's actually place it in the 문장. Okay, so B is going to say, B, the captain of the ship, will say, no, we can make it to the next island. It can go a little more. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요. Okay, does that make sense? If it does, 넘어갈까요? Okay, so if it does, now let's take a look at the full 대화, conversation, and see how it flows if there is no pause in between. Okay, so I'll first say 천천히, 천천히, 저 섬에 상륙해요. 저 섬에 대한 정보가 없어요. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요. With a little bit of more 속도, 저 섬에 상륙해요. 저 섬에 대한 정보가 없어요. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요. With extra 속도, 저 섬에 상륙해요. 저 섬에 대한 정보가 없어요. 배 당장 고쳐야 돼요. 조금 더 갈 수 있어요.